And good evening once again, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD Under the Radar video podcast coming to you here. We're recording live Thursday evening, December 17th, a week
Merry
away from
Christmas.
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 David, are you ready for Christmas?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Chad, I love Christmas.
You're all decked out there. What are those reindeer antlers you have on?
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, and we're going to start off with our holiday gift.
Okay, our holiday gifts. What? Now, I guess a lot of people out there are kind of like me, like last minute, haven't even bought your gifts yet.
Right. And again, this is what, let's see if we can get it here. This is what we have for you. Here it is right here. This is just a Christmas card. Like if you don't know, oh crap, what happened? Okay, there it is. Sorry about the confusion. But this is just it. You don't know what to get somebody. It's like, say you just got married. It's your first Christmas together and you don't know what to get her. Well, this is what you get her. Just print this out and give this to her. It's a picture of me getting wasted. Merry Christmas. This is from Hoops HD to all of you, free of charge. You don't have to go to the store. You don't have to, deal with UPS, Amazon, anything like this. It's right here. We will tweet this out a little later. So look for it like Hoops HD, David G. Puppet. It will be out there. You just got to download this, print this out, and give it to whoever it is you don't know what to get for Christmas.
And you have our express permission to reprint, copy this as many times as you like. You can give it out to everybody. You got an office, 100 people, 50 people in your office. You want to don't know what to get them all. Go to the photocopy machine, run off 100 copies, pass them out.
Yes, there is no limit. There's no limit to how many if you want one, take one. If you want 1,000, take 1,000. This is our gift to you.
David Griggs drinking whiskey.
Yes, it's what everybody wants.
Well, David, I guess my first question to you is whether or not one of these is going to be sent to Bo Ryan, who is going to be spending the holidays at home this year and every year from here on out.
Yes. Now, obviously, we're going to start off with, I guess this is what you would call a Hoops HD report extra. Yeah. We will talk at length about this on Monday. We haven't really written about it at all. Bo Ryan has resigned. He resigned after their last game when they won. They had lost to Marquette over the weekend. One can't help but wonder, had he already made the decision and he wanted to just coach them to one more win. Bo Ryan, in my opinion, belongs in the Hall of Fame. I know that he may not be considered for it because he never won a Division I national championship, and he didn't rack up a lot of the wins. But at the D3 level, he won 4. There aren't many good guys in college basketball. He was one of them. I hate to see him go. I'm happy for him. I think that when it's time, and he felt it was time, but I'm going to miss him. I really am.
I agree with you. I think he really was one of the great coaches, and I agree with you also that I do believe he belongs in the Hall of Fame. We'll talk a little bit about this more Monday night. I'm not that keen on the timing of this. I really thought that, especially with what I thought Wisconsin would have coming back this year and what they've performed down to that level, that this is something that I think he should have done after the Final Four last year. I understand that there may have been a little bit going on here with him trying to get his replacement lined up by retiring at this point in time, because the athletic director and the school there at Wisconsin really didn't want his choice as his replacement. But we'll talk about this a little more Monday night. But
big piece of news there.
But we do want to get into the under the radar stuff here. This is our under the radar podcast. So David, why don't you fill us in a little once again on what it means to be under the radar?
Okay, under the radar. It is essentially what we have are the 5 power conferences that for football. That's the Big Ten, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC, and Pac-12, and then we have 4 other regular multi-bid leagues on top of that. That's the Big East, Mountain West, Atlantic 10, and which one am I missing?
The American.
The American, yes. So those conferences, anybody in those conferences is not under the radar. Those are regular multi-bid leagues. Most of them have expansive television deals, so those are not under the radar. Also, another disqualifier or whatever is if a team is ranked in the top 25. Because again, if you're nationally ranked, then you're not under the radar. And then there's two other exceptions. The West Coast Conference is considered the under the radar, but Gonzaga and BYU are not. Those two individual schools have brand names that warrant not being under the radar.
Correct. And Gonzaga falling into two. Well, actually, Gonzaga is only in one category now. I think they have fallen out of the top 25.
Yeah.
As of their last, but they are still not under the radar.
Right.
But on that note, David, I think the place we need to start off tonight before we go through the conferences in our normal alphabetical order is with one of the most noteworthy under the radar victories of the season happened just this week, and that is the Monmouth Hawks once again in the news. And I got to tell you, David, there is one team in the entire country, and I'm not saying just under the radar and over the radar, or on the radar, or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
There's only one team in the entire nation right now that has 4 wins away from home against teams that are currently ranked in the KenPom top 50.
Yeah.
It's not Duke, it's not Kentucky, it's not
Of course
Arizona,
it's not. Because you
not
said the
safe.
key phrase, it's away from home. Monmouth only one home game all season so far. They've played 9 games away from home, won 6 of them, and they've won at Georgetown. They've won at UCLA. They beat USC and Notre Dame on a neutral floor. That's the kind of profile that gets you inside the bubble. They did have kind of one loss on there that still kind of has me holding my nose, but what a season. And did you watch this game against a Georgetown team that had been rocking and rolling? I mean, this Georgetown team had been playing phenomenally well since losing their opener to Radford. And Monmouth went in there and crushed them.
They got a 10-point lead early in the first half and just never looked back. Georgetown, every time you thought Georgetown might be ready to make a run, Monmouth would come down, hit a 3, do something, get a couple of turnovers. I watched the entire game. They looked good the entire game. And I got to say that one thing that you notice a lot when teams are looking to pull an upset, maybe get that lead in the first half, have the lead at halftime, and then the better team seems to always show up in the second half. I'm kind of thinking that what Monmouth is doing with their bench, the way it loosens these kids up, the way it really helps you, keeps you from doing what a lot of teams do, which is tighten up at halftime and start thinking too much about it. They're just out there having so much fun that they don't realize they're pulling off the upset until the game's already gone final.
Yeah, I agree. I think it definitely does keep you loose. Like it doesn't, they don't get that deer in headlights look that a lot of teams get. I mean, a lot of teams play loose. They go out there with nothing to lose, like you said. And then when there's 5 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go, when they're in a position to win, they freeze up and they start playing not to lose. And they end up losing as a result. You see that in every sport. That's not Monmouth. I mean, they're just out there. They are so loose. They're having fun. I don't want to say
they're out there doing the Sistine Chapel, and that loosens them up.
Yeah, I don't want to say the bench is the only reason this is happening. I mean, that's far from it. But I do think that it works for them. And most people are loving it. Their fans are loving it. We're loving it. You have had some people complaining about it, about how it's poor form, it's bad etiquette. Why can't they just sit there and focus? And they would never put up with it, and how annoying they find it. And my feeling on this, if you're annoyed by this, I'm happy you're annoyed. I hope they keep doing it and that you keep being annoyed.
I think it's not like if they were running out onto the court, I understand the problem. If they were doing something that was directly insulting to the other team, if they were doing something that was making fun of one of the other players or the other head coach, I have a problem with that. But they're not. They're just having fun. They're doing it on the bench. They're doing the joust, which I saw in the Wagner game I was at last weekend, or the baseball, or the Sistine Chapel, or the anything else. It's funny. It's fun. They're celebrating their team. It's just, I think it's great.
I mean, if you've ever seen, and I realize this is not, but like college softball, where the dugouts do cheers, and especially in baseball, where there's a lot of stuff like this. In fact, I've seen like the joust. So there's been college baseball teams that have done that. It's done in that same spirit. It's not meant to be demeaning or insulting to the other team. Why anyone would be annoyed by this is just the only people that are people that want something to complain about.
people that whose teams Monmouth is beating and want
Yeah.
something to complain about. Let's be a little more specific here.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
But
and
what do you make of it? I mean, we're going to get to our under the radar top 10 a little later, but uh, this profile is really strong.
they have now beaten two Pac-12 teams, an ACC team, a Big East team. Coming up Sunday, they're going to beat a Big Ten team. They're going into Rutgers. I don't think Rutgers has any shot in that game, even though it's at the rack. They do not have another real tough game. They have three non-conference games left in the season: at Rutgers, at Cornell, and then at Army, which is which is clearly the toughest of those three that's left. And we'll talk about this Army team in a little bit here later on tonight. In conference, they have a trip to Iona. That's going to be their toughest. I still think this is a really good Iona team with AJ English leading the way there. Other than that, this team, it's a 20-game Metro Atlantic season. I think if they go 17-3 and they win these last three non-conference games, they're a lock. And they could go 16-4. They could lose four more games. It's still
well. They've already lost one to Canisius.
Three more games, and they could.
Yeah, and it's a game that they really should have won. It's a game where their defense, quite frankly, was pretty bad. I mean, it was so noticeably not what we had seen them play like. I don't, and again, it's just an off night. Like when you play 30 games, if your defense is good for 29 of them, then you're doing pretty good. But
and you're playing your ninth consecutive road game, and your best player is in foul trouble the whole game. And Canisius just shot lights out from three. Also, that was part of the game. They just caught a real hot. Canisius got really hot that game.
Yeah, but I mean, they have paved the way for themselves. It's not a situation where, they're good enough, but moving forward, the best that they can hope for is to not add bad losses. This team has 4 really good wins away from home already on their profile.
And quite honestly, these wins I think are going to look better and better as the season goes along. This UCLA win looks much more amazing than when it even happened. Yeah. I think this Georgetown win is going to be really solid. USC is a team we're looking at, and Notre Dame we haven't written off by any means at this point.
Yeah, not at all. So it's just fun. It's a great story. It's going to be interesting watching them go through Metro Atlantic play. They're suddenly going to have a target on their backs. They're going to be the showcase game whenever they go on the road. But you were there. You mentioned it the other night, but what was the experience like? Because they did sell the game out. It sold out. It was a walk-up crowd, but they did sell the game out.
It was sold out. It was a raucous crowd. The student section that was completely packed, and these kids were going nuts for the team there. They were just. It was a great crowd. Everybody loved it, and I mean, every basket it was. Watch the hoop go in, and everybody's eyes went to the bench. It was just what are they going to do now? And I mean, I don't think more than a handful of people left until the final buzzer, and it was a 20-point victory. It was a fairly comfortable victory. Wagner really wasn't in the game. It was in the game a little bit in the first half, but never did anything in the second half. And I just thought the team looks good. I mean, they make a substitution, and you're still getting guys coming off the bench. They're probably 8 deep easily. This Monmouth team.
They are.
If not more. So I think this is a real dangerous team. And if you look at their scoring, you say, Justin Robinson is a great player. He's the team leader. But their scoring is balanced right across the board. They have 7 or 8 guys who can put double digits up any night.
Yeah.
But let's move on from Monmouth. We got a few other teams to go.
And the thing is, they're in 3rd place in their conference.
But let's start off. Go back up to the America East where we start most times. David, at this point, everybody has at least 4 losses. With Albany, New Hampshire, and Stony Brook having the best overall records. I think we've been talking about this as being an Albany-Stony Brook battle, and I don't think anything has changed on that at this point.
Not really. And again, it's to the point to where I don't even think anybody in this league is anywhere close to the NIT. So it's basically filler between now and the start of conference play. And again, the conference being set up as it is, there are stakes games because the conference tournament is on campus sites. But right now, Albany, I think, has looked the best. I've only seen Stony Brook play a handful of times. Saw New Hampshire, wasn't that impressed. Saw Maine. They lost to Boston College. How in the world does that happen? But
Yeah.
but anyway, I do think that it's going to be Albany and Stony Brook. It's kind of a 2-horse race.
Yeah, Stony Brook actually tonight went out and just went on the road down to American and beat them by about 20 points. So that was a pretty impressive score-wise, at least for the Stony Brook on the victory.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. It is going to be down to those two teams, and the only way to get an IT is by an automatic NIT qualifier, obviously.
Right, and this conference is probably right now. And again, you don't know what's going to happen with it as it plays out. But right now, it's looking like it's not going to be inside the first four. I mean, it will be in the first four. That's
Okay, yeah. It's going to be one of the teams that's go to Dayton,
right?
Most likely. Team that's probably conference where that's probably not going to go to Dayton, although it's probably going to be looking like a 15 line, maybe up to the 14 line in the Atlantic Sun.
Yeah.
Where North Florida and JIT are the two teams we've been focusing on all season. I don't think anything has changed from what we've seen so far there.
No, Florida Gulf Coast has looked not crappy. Everyone else in this league is terrible. And this is a league that has been a lot of fun to watch over the years. But what in the world? South Carolina Upstate just was awful all season long. You know, this is just a really, really bad league, with the exception of the 2 or 3 teams at the top.
Exactly. I mean, Upstate has had some really good years, but they really lost everybody off of last year's team. So this was a rebuilding season for them, and they've looked that way this year, definitely. Yeah. Over in the Big Sky, we've been following the Sacramento State team a little bit so far. They had that huge win in Arizona State. They're still looking pretty good. They've lost a couple games over the past couple of weeks since December started at UC Davis and at Portland, but they're still looking like the best team in the conference despite those losses.
Yeah, and they're looking like the best team in the conference, and they actually look okay. Another way of putting it is that they're the least worst team in the conference.
Right. I mean, you do still have that Montana team that started the season with a win over Boise State. That's looking like a lot better win, but yeah, that's really all that they've done, and have lost some very questionable games since then.
Yes.
The Big South Conference, David, this is a conference I want to talk a little bit about tonight, actually. Okay. I don't know if you caught the game last night between High Point and NC State at all, but
I did.
High Point really should have won that game.
Yeah, they should have. And I thought they were going to for basically the entire game.
Right.
It was their game. Yeah, they really should have won.
The end game situation was they had the ball sidelines out of bound after a timeout with 19 seconds left. Cody Martin for NC State steals it, goes in for the layup, gets fouled, so he doesn't make the shot, but he got injured on the play, and which was actually ended up helping High Point because they got to choose the free throw shooter, and they chose Anya, who shoots I think about 20% from the free throw line, and he badly missed both shots. But NC State gets the rebound, and Kat Barber hits the miracle shot at the buzzer to win the game. NC State celebrates the victory over a team that they should have blown out. But
yeah, real gutty performance, and that one's going to sting for a little bit because I mean that was a seed line game, maybe 2 seed lines. They win that game. It's a difference between a 16 and a 15, and maybe even a 16 and a 14.
All that being said, I really do like this High Point team, and I think they do end up winning this conference at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's going to be a barn burner out in Campbell. The tournament should be at High Point if High Point wins it, but it's not. It's at Campbell regardless of what they do.
Yeah, so High Point, even if they go undefeated in conference play, they have to go on the road for the conference tournament.
Right.
Next conference. I'm sorry. Do you have something else you want to add?
I was just going to say, is it too early to start talking centenary? We do have an outside candidate in this, but a candidate nonetheless in Liberty.
Liberty does have 3 wins. I think they're all non-D1 though at this point.
That's still too many, even if it's non-D1. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. Moving on to the Big West. We've liked this UC Irvine team a lot this year, but they're now down to a 7-4 record. Having suffered loss. No losses are really bad though. Boise, Evansville, St. Mary's, Oregon, all away from home.
Yeah, and I still like them to do well in the conference. I realize Hawaii's got that bloated record, but all of it has come out in the state of Hawaii. Irvine looks like the best team. Are you a little disappointed in this league? I thought that it would be a little stronger than what it's shown us.
I guess I'm still kind of waiting to see if somebody else steps up in this league. I thought they would. Actually, the team that I thought was a sleeper pick this year was this UC Riverside team, who's done
Yeah,
nothing at all yet this year. But it kind of with Santa Barbara having a down year, that kind of hurts the league. Also, they've been
yeah,
always seem to be up there in the standings.
yeah. Long Beach as well is kind of rebuilding. So
And Long Beach plays such a weak schedule as well.
yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, they've struggled against a weak schedule.
Uh,
San Diego State. Duke.
we are not serious here. Long Beach State
Yeah,
notoriously has one of the toughest schedules in the country.
right.
Over in the Colonial, if you look at overall record right now, we've got to start. Maybe we need to start talking a little bit about this College of Charleston team that I did not think was going to do anything this year, but does have the LSU win already under their belts.
Yeah, not that that's
Not that that's
Meaning a
everybody's
whole
beat
lot.
LSU, but
but I thought that this was going to be just an atrociously bad team. Incredible job out at College of Charleston this year. I believe it's the second year coach. He came from Clemson. I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Research team, Chad. Research.
that's Earl Grant.
Yeah, Earl Grant. What a phenomenal job he's doing out there. I mean, this was. It looked kind of pathetic, and even if they don't win a game for the rest of the year, it was still tops what we thought they would do. And they don't look that bad. I mean, I've seen them play a couple times.
He came in at the very last minute at the start of last season when with the whole mess that they had there.
Yeah, with Wojcik.
With Doug Wojcik, yeah. But I think he's way surpassed my expectations so far this year.
Yeah.
Of course, I think we got to talk about some other teams as well this conference.
Yeah. Northeastern, they have the big win over Miami. I think they've kind of been disappointing other than that. They have 3 losses. All 3 of them were games that they could have won or should have won. I understand you're going to trip up, but when you're trying to make a case that you belong inside the bubble, you don't get many strikes against sub-NIT teams. And Northeastern has not looked that good except when they've played Miami. James Madison,
Miami, Florida. They looked very bad when they played Miami, Ohio.
Yes, Miami, Florida. Thanks you for clearing that up because they lost to Miami. Good grief, they lost to Miami, Ohio. James Madison has looked better since being back at full strength, I believe. Or they are back at full strength now, right?
My understanding is they're back at full strength, and yeah, they're starting to come up here, and they may be the team to really keep an eye on. They've now run off 6 straight wins, including George Mason and Marshall twice, actually.
Right. And they've kind of blasted through their last couple games. Now, again, it was Mason and Marshall who aren't really strong, but I think that they finally hit their stride. It's not too late, but they have a razor thin margin for error.
It's razor thin, as in they maybe one more loss the rest of the way, and then a loss the conference championship game, and they'll get it under some consideration. It's probably too late because they really didn't schedule strong enough to get the shots that a team like Monmouth got this year.
Right, they didn't. William and Mary, looking at them, I still like this team. They lost at Dayton by 3, a game that they could have won. They lost at Virginia, no harm there. The one game on this profile that really changes the entire complexion of it is that loss to Howard. They don't lose to Howard. We're suddenly talking about a team that only has 2 losses, both to tournament teams, both away from home, and one of which that they almost won. With that Howard loss, I mean, it's just not good. They would have to basically, like James Madison, run away from it. And I don't know if they're good enough to do that.
Well, they do have a road win over NC State, convincing road win over NC State. Yeah. Not that great of an NC State team. Now, they do have 2 more non-conference home games. Well, they just have 3, but one of them is against Mary Washington. I don't know who she is. Is it just like a 1 out of 5 thing here? Or?
Yeah, nice woman there.
Okay, but after whatever is going on with Mary Washington, they have 2 more home non-conference games against High Point and Central Michigan. If they pick up those 2 wins, they may start looking stronger wins because they may be 2 wins over potential tournament teams, and that may help a little bit here.
Yeah. And again, I really like this league. I think it's kind of underperformed. I guess that's how much I liked it coming into the season. William and Mary, I thought they'd be doing a little bit better. James Madison, I realized they had injuries. Northeastern, I was really big on all three of those teams, and none of them have been bad, but they haven't been as good as I thought they would be.
David,
Charleston has been better.
Over in Conference USA, I've been hinting about a team for a couple of weeks now that I think you kind of just laughed me off a little bit. Now in the past week, they picked up an overtime win over Auburn and pretty much clobbered Belmont tonight. That's this Middle Tennessee State team. I'm really starting to look at them seriously at this point.
Yeah, Kermit Davis has it going on. They lost their opener to Murray State. Since then, I think they've won, is it 7 out of 8, I believe?
It's 7 out of 8. The only loss was lost to VCU, which is not
right. And they actually played very well in that game. It was at Middle Tennessee. I thought that they were playing at a neutral like the Gaylord Center in Nashville, but it was actually on their campus. So nice win for VCU there. But they really played well in that game if you watched it. So this is a team that this is faint praise. They certainly look better than anyone else in this league right now.
They do. They got one more very interesting non-conference game coming up. They're playing South Dakota State at a game, I believe that's actually in Sioux Falls, not on campus. Between two of our top-rated under the radar teams, so they could pick up that one as well, which is kind of a semi-away game, and then come up with the regular season championship in Middle Tennessee in Conference USA. There, they may be worth discussing at the end of the season.
They may be. They're Conference USA. It's UTEP, it's La Tech, it's Middle Tennessee, perhaps UAB, and then it's the Southland. That's what it is.
You're insulting the Southland.
And they go to La Tech. They have to win that one because I know that La Tech probably isn't a tournament team, but I mean that is. If you want to show that you can do, it's at least a win of some substance, winning on the road against what's probably an NIT team. What a horrible league! Like they're going to have to blow through this league, Chad. I think.
This is not a good Conference USA. I know that the new commissioner there in Conference USA really wants to upgrade the talent, and hopefully one of the steps to do that is start by upgrading their television package, because they really are tough to find on TV.
Right.
And the game is not on TV. You, short of paying $80 a year or whatever Conference USA charges, you can't watch the games at all. So
yeah,
they need to do something about that. It's
horrendously underexposed, and they have football too. You would think that having football and FBS football, you would think an FBS football conference would warrant more exposure. The Mid-American has it. They have the good deal. The Sun Belt, they were crappy for years, but why isn't it? Just makes no sense that this conference, out of all the FBS conferences, it is by far the least exposed.
Well, I have heard that I know their media rights deal is up soon, and that CBS may not be very interested in redoing it. Which CBS not only has a package of games on CBS Sports Network, but also runs their streaming for the Conference USA digital network. If they get out of that package and go to something free like Mountain West has with the Campus Insiders, it could really help just by doing that.
You know what would pay slightly less but probably warrant more exposure? YouTube. Just hangouts on air. Just right here.
You know what?
HD could bid on this. We would do $1 for the exclusive broadcast rights.
We should do Hoops HD. David, you and I could do the play-by-play. How about a game of the week, Conference USA? I'll be happy to do a Rice North Texas game.
Yes, we will do this. We will put in a bid to do this.
We get our colleague Lee Delvecchio. He loves bad basketball. He
would love this.
But let's move on. The Horizon League. David, I know we've talked a lot about this Valpo team. They continue to keep rolling, but I think there's another team in the Horizon you want to talk about this week.
Yeah, how about Milwaukee? Wasn't expecting much from them this year. I watched their game at Notre Dame, and it was the first time I didn't see them play Denver Lipscomb. I knew that they were 3-0, watched it, and they were really right in there. And then when after that, Notre Dame went to the the Advocare Classic. I wanted to say Old Spice, but the Advocare, the Orlando tournament looked real unimpressive. So again, not taking a whole lot of note of Milwaukee. It's like, well, Milwaukee's not that good. It's just Notre Dame isn't that good. And then when they lost to Murray State in Duquesne, but this is they have an 8-point loss at Notre Dame where they were in there for most of the game. They lost by 3 to Murray, 4 to Duquesne. They arguably should have won both of those, and it's not even arguably. And they've beaten everybody else. They beat Central Michigan. They beat Edwardsville, and then they won at Wisconsin. Now that's becoming a pastime, winning at Wisconsin. But this is a team we kind of have to watch, and right as I say that, I see that they're sweating out South Dakota.
I was going to say, well, you may want to go ahead and come back, and if we watch this, you just saw about a 5-minute stretch where you couldn't hear any voices because David just edited everything out he said about Milwaukee because they lost the game tonight. But they're in a game with South Dakota right now. We're down pretty big early. They've been making a comeback in that game.
Yeah, and then they go to Minnesota, and who doesn't like winning at Minnesota these days?
And I think they got a real good shot at that.
Yeah, but you mentioned Valpo. We'll get to them during the top 10. They are inside the bubble. They're one of 5 under-the-radar teams that are, I think.
I think there could be more than 5, but we'll get there in a little bit. Over in the Ivy League, as of this year, it's the 14-game tournament is what they call it. Princeton is still looking pretty good as far as the non-conference schedule is going. I know really we're not going to know much about the Ivy League until they actually get into conference play, though.
Right. You can't really tell much. Harvard, I know they're just 2-6. They're looking a little better, though.
They hung with Kansas really well. It kind of impressed me there.
Yeah, I like this Columbia team. I still really like them. When they show up, they're great.
That's been the problem. They've had a few games where they have not shown up so far this year. We already discussed the Metro Atlantic, unless there's somebody else besides Monmouth or Iona who we've already discussed that you wanted to mention at all in that conference.
Yes. Okay. Ryder. What the hell? Anyway, moving on.
I'm actually thinking about going up to a Ryder game later on this year. So we'll see.
But no, I've been somewhat impressed with the Siena team. In the sense that they're better than I thought they were. I don't think they're anywhere near as noteworthy as Monmouth.
Over in the Mid-American, Northern Illinois gave Ohio State a game last night. They didn't end up winning it. They ended up losing the game, but we kind of said, that they were just good because of their schedule. But I thought they looked pretty good in that game.
Well, yeah, and but to be fair, everyone is looking good against Ohio State these days. Still, probably Ohio State's biggest win of the year. Northern Illinois' program is completely it is just so drastically improved from what it was 2 and 3 years ago. So that's worth pointing out. I still like Kent State and Akron. I like both of them a lot. And Ohio is hit or miss, but I've seen them play and they're not bad.
Kent State and Akron, I agree with. Still, I'm not ready to write off Central Michigan yet. I believe that Chris Fowler is finally healthy again and playing. He has now played. He's played the last 2 games, in fact. So which they've won both of them, including a win over Texas Southern the other night. So keep an eye on Central Michigan now that he is back in the lineup. They may start making some noise here in the conference.
Right, and this is a fun conference once we get in the conference play. No one's really stepped up and done anything really big out of conference. In fact, a lot of teams didn't play the types of schedules that we're used to seeing, but you have Kent State and Akron as a big rivalry. You got Ohio in there, Bowling Green. I mean, this is like an under-the-radar version of what the classic Big East lineup, the classic ACC, and the classic Big 8 used to be. The rivalry in this conference, by under-the-radar standards, I'd say it's as intense here as it is anywhere.
David, one of my pet peeves is bracketologists out there who put out brackets and just throw in whatever team is currently in first place in a conference as the automatic bid winner instead of taking the team that's actually the best team in the conference.
Well,
And
they're projecting.
the reason I'm bringing that up is the MEAC, because for the next month and a half, you're going to be seeing North Carolina A&T in everybody's bracket, because this team, which is probably one of the worst teams in a bad conference, is 2-0 right now and in first place.
They're in first place. So if you're doing checkpoint style bracketing, yeah, that's who you put in, I guess.
I still like Hampton as the best team in this conference. Howard, which actually surprisingly lost at North Carolina A&T, but does have that Bill and Mary win on their resume as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Hampton in this league.
The Missouri Valley Conference. Would you agree with me that Wichita State is fully back at this point?
Fully back, and they have a lot of work to do, but they're capable of doing it. I think they will do it. I think they'll be safely inside the bubble once they're done.
And if you look at their power rating, at their numbers, they're 48th in the RPI, 34th in the KenPom. Even with the losses, their numbers have not been hurt too bad, enough that they can easily bounce back from that.
And again, there is enough weight on their schedule that they can lift. Seton Hall, not a great team, but if they go and win at Seton Hall, it'll look good. And this is a conference where teams typically play well at home, and if they go out there and win on the road, like if they win 6 or 7 conference road games, the committee's going to take them.
They will. I mean, the other two teams that we've been looking at here, Evansville, I still really like what they've been doing. I like this team. Their schedule strength was pretty weak, and that may be what ends up coming back to bite them in the end if they can't pick up a couple good wins in the Valley.
Yeah.
And Northern Iowa still does have that huge win against North Carolina, so you can't write them off.
Yeah. They need to stop living on borrowed time, though.
Yeah, huge game for them coming up this week and playing Iowa State in Des Moines.
Yeah.
They win that one. They've made up for the losses to Richmond and to New Mexico.
Right.
Northeast Conference. Anything you like there at all, or are we just going to send the winner to Dayton and move on?
Send the winner to Dayton and move on. I love this league. Once they get into league play, I don't. And again, everybody's just kind of going out and getting paid now. But when league play starts, you like this one too. You just don't like it now.
I think the Northeast is a really fun conference, and there's a lot to play for here because you're playing for home court in the conference tournament. You're playing not to finish in the bottom 2, only the top 8 even qualify for the conference tournament. So there's a lot out there to play for.
Yeah. All right.
Moving on after the Northeast Conference, over in the OVC. David, you asked the question in email today, so I'm going to ask it back to you. What's wrong with Belmont?
They're not very good. And it makes no sense. They had such a strong finish to the season last year. They had all those players back, and they just got – and I know Middle Tennessee is a good team. We just talked about how good they were. But Belmont has been really overall a disappointment. 6-5. This is a team we thought – at least I thought was good enough to land inside the bubble. None of their losses are terrible. Now, this is who they've lost to. Arizona State, who's better than expected. Evansville, who you just mentioned. At BYU, who isn't good, but still, not exactly in the field either. They're really good at home, and they have the loss to Valpo and then the loss tonight to Middle Tennessee. None of those are bad, but what's bad is that collectively, all 5 of them going 0 for 5 in those games is what's bad. If you're a tournament team, you've got to pick up 2, 3, something like that.
The only thing I can say for them is that there's no one in the conference that has done anything better than them, or even done anything close to equal to what they've done. So really, I still think they blow through this conference.
I think they blow through the conference, but one of the games they win better be that last one because they are not getting inside the bubble. I don't think.
And you got to remember, they get a buy into the semifinals in the OVC, and the tournaments in Nashville. If they can't win that conference tournament, they don't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament, in my opinion.
Right.
Let's go over to the Patriot League and.
Oh, I know you've been waiting.
I've been wanting to go here now. Winners of 5 straight games, just won at Air Force, which is a long road trip for them. They actually have now 5 road wins on the season. Maybe they haven't beaten anybody of note yet. but those Black Knights of Army are 8-2 with the best record in the conference.
Yeah, they're 8-2, and they really played well against George Washington in one of their losses.
Right.
They look as good as anyone in the Patriot League right now. I've been trumpeting Bucknell all year long. I'm with Army now. I think Army is the team in this league.
You're on the bandwagon, huh?
Yes.
And going for that first NCAA tournament bid, really had a disappointing year last year when we thought they could get one, but they really brought everybody back as well. And
Yeah.
I think they're finally starting to click here. Whatever went wrong last year is now in last year. They've got 2 non-conference games left. Home against Marist, and that big one we mentioned earlier. Home against Monmouth on December 28th. Then they go right into Patriot League play after that.
Right.
In the SoCon, here's another. This, if it hadn't been for what Monmouth did at Georgetown, this is where we would have started the show off.
Yeah.
And that's what Chattanooga did in Dayton over the weekend.
Really big win for Chattanooga. It's the kind of win that, again, makes the difference between needing to win the conference tournament and not. They followed that up later this week with I was kind of surprised at home Tennessee Tech. I thought they were going to destroy them, and they didn't. But they also had a huge loss over the weekend, and that was to their star player Casey Jones. He leads the team in points and assists, and I think even rebounds.
Yeah, Casey Jones really can play. Now, this is a team that does have a very balanced scoring attack, at least. And the big thing is Jones was not there for the Dayton game.
Right.
And they still won at Dayton.
Yeah.
A Flyers team that's playing as good as anyone else out there, I thought, going into that game.
Right.
And that, I mean, just the fact that they won that game without Jones tells me a lot. He's still being listed as out indefinitely, so I still don't know what that means. Quite honestly, I've been trying to follow up on that.
Yeah, because nothing's definitive; it's indefinite. But it's if they get him back, they really should blow through this league. A couple other teams, Sanford is much improved, but they're not on Chattanooga's level. Mercer has a bloated record, but it's against weak competition. Really, nobody else in this league equals them, especially if Jones is back. If they blow through this league, I think they finish inside the bubble.
I can't disagree with that, and I think that they should blow through this league. And really, they've got 3 non-conference games left. None of them should be tests. The home against Kennesaw and Radford and at Lipscomb.
Yeah.
I think if they need an at-large bid, they can't afford to lose more than 2 more times this season, and one of them is going to be in the conference tournament.
Right.
So, but I think that they can go.
Yeah,
through the season with only 1 more loss. That's how good they are.
Yeah, they're definitely good enough to do that. So,
over in the Southland,
oh,
aka Conference USA.
Yeah.
If we take a look at RPIs right now, Texas A&M Corpus Christi has the best one, despite the loss at Wisconsin, and they'll be down as the last team that played a game against Bo Ryan.
Yeah, and that's who we projected in. That's probably who we'll continue to project in, at least until conference play starts.
And
no one else in this league. No one else. No. Oh, this is just. We have. Oh, Chad. Oh, this league. We have 4 teams with just 1 Div 1 win and 5 teams with no Div 1 wins. This is the new SWAC. This league is. Oh Lord.
Yeah, it's been a rough season so far for this league. Stephen F. Austin, who was our pick getting in, may still end up getting the automatic bid, but who knows? You got teams like Sam Houston State. You say, 4-5, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Except their wins are against St. Thomas, Texas, Sulra State, and Litorno. And one of their losses was to Wiley College.
Yeah. That's the Coyote.
Now, if the Southland is the new SWAC, the SWAC is no longer the SWAC, I guess we could say. But if we've been following the SWAC a lot this year, actually, they are currently sitting at a total of 9 road non-conference wins against D1 teams this year. I was hoping for the 10th tonight. Jackson State was in a game with Ohio, but ended up losing it. But this is the most since 1990, 25 years. This is the best season we've seen from the SWAC.
It is. And it's been Southern is actually legitimate. I mean, I think they're good enough to stay with somebody in the round of 64 if they can get high enough up the seed line. They went into Memphis, led for most of the game, really had a chance to win it. Alabama A&M much improved. It's just a much improved league. Now, again, we still have 4 teams that haven't won, but
and I'm not, even though they're sitting there at 1-9, Texas Southern has not played a home game yet. They've completely, they're cashing checks left and right this season, and they were one of the preseason picks to win the conference. I would not write them off quite yet. I think they may make some noise when we get to conference play.
Yeah, agreed.
Over in the Summit League, let's take a look at this South Dakota State team. I know they did suffer a loss the other night at Texas Tech. I was a little disappointed. I thought it was a game they had a shot at winning, but
and I was kind of disappointed with how they played. I mean, it was a good game for a while, but it was by no means it's not as good as I've seen South Dakota State play this year.
Right, but I still really like the South Dakota State team. North Dakota State's been wrecked with some injuries, but still has a decent overall record of 7-3. But has lost any shot at an at-large bid. I would.
Oh yeah, as has most of this league. I don't think. Maybe South Dakota State if they win out, and it would be kind of rough. But South Dakota State will probably get one if they win out.
Yeah, I think that they're the only one there. But even then, they don't have that big win. Honestly, if you want the biggest win, it's still Western Illinois' win at Wisconsin.
Right. Yeah.
Let's go over to the Sun Belt, where if we're talking at-large bids and we're talking about there could be 5, 6, even 7 under-the-radar teams that are still in the at-large bid hunt here from what we've seen so far. I think 2 of them are sitting in the Sun Belt here.
And both of them are really good. This Little Rock team, I know they have not beaten any really good teams the way Monmouth has and maybe the way Chattanooga has, but they've beaten a lot of decent wins. They won at San Diego State, won at Tulsa, won at Idaho. Like they have 8 wins and 6 of them were away from home.
And they won at DePaul. Now DePaul stinks.
Yes,
they won at DePaul by 22 points. They crushed them, and you get credit for that in my book. The way you win.
Yeah, and they go to Texas Tech. But that's just the thing. And the committee in the past, I know that it's a different lineup now, and some of the people that I think heavily favored road wins are not there anymore. But this team, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins away from home already.
Yeah. The other team, of course, we've got to discuss is this Texas Arlington team. They do have the marquee wins, having won at Ohio State and at Memphis. And a great game against Texas that they just barely lost in overtime.
Yeah.
Their non-conference schedule is done, though, other than a home game against Sul Ross State, whoever that is.
Right.
But I think Arlington, if these 2 teams, can pretty much roll against everybody else in the conference other than each other, could we be looking at a multi-bid Sun Belt this year?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's happened before. South Alabama's gotten in. We've had Middle Tennessee get in as an at-large. So, I mean, if you get out there and play the way these 2 teams have and you get out there and win, they'll take you. I really think the loss at Texas, it doesn't hurt them in the sense that it's a bad loss, but it hurts them in the sense that they really could have used that win. They get that win. How much different is their profile looking right now? Right. Ohio State, they're not going to get a whole lot of credit for that because Ohio State isn't any good.
I think you do get some credit for it when you go and you win on the road against a Big Ten team that's not named Rutgers or Penn State. But over the West Coast Conference, we're not going to be
the only team that beat Fordham too. Just throwing that out there.
But over in the West Coast Conference, we're not going to be talking Gonzaga or BYU, but I think we got to have a little bit of a St. Mary's discussion, aka 8-0 at home, 0-1 on the road.
Yeah, and their one loss, they win in the Cal, and I was really impressed with how well they played. I thought Cal would run them out of the place simply because, they had been home court heroes against teams that, other than UC Irvine, really weren't that good. But they played really well at Cal.
They beat Stanford as well.
Yeah, and Southern Utah probably isn't a centenary candidate this year, but St. Mary's certainly made them look like one.
92-36. That is absolute destruction.
Yeah.
They are going to be starting West Coast Conference play next week. In fact, they do have a couple non-conference games left uh, as the season goes along, including a home game to end the season against Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
But if they can pick up a couple wins in the Gonzaga BYU, maybe split with Gonzaga, get it split with BYU, beat up on everybody else, do they get consideration or do they get
They'll get consideration. And the key word there is consideration. One of the things that is going to work against them so badly, and we see it every year, and some teams never learn, is how they scheduled out of conference. They played one road game. How much more obvious does it have to be that the committee does not like you to do that than what it is?
Yeah, I mean, it is not the type of schedule you should put together if you want to get an at-large bid. And
Right.
if they really thought they were an at-large caliber team, they should have gone down the road, period.
They should have, yeah.
And so I don't really think they're going to have too much of a right to complain if they are on the bubble at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely not. They do not.
If they're on the bubble and it comes to West Coast Conference tournament time, well, win the damn tournament. That's what I'm going to tell them.
Right.
Over in the WAC.
Oh, yes.
Well, let's talk about the 7 currently eligible teams first.
Well, none of them matter. Only the ineligible team.
Okay, well, David, go for it.
Well, the Lobes, the best team in the conference who should be in the NCAA tournament, not eligible for the NCAA tournament because they are a transitional team because of stupid NCAA rules and policies that are in direct conflict with what their stated mission statement is. That's why we need a waiver, Lopes waiver, hashtag Lopes waiver.
And they did suffer a disappointing home loss this past weekend, overtime loss to Omaha. But they did bounce back with the win over Delaware State 2 nights ago. And a huge week coming up for the Lopes this week. They begin by playing Friday night at San Diego State, a place where they can win, although it's not going to be an easy by any means. And then they go next week, they go to Vegas for a 4-team tournament, beginning with Houston, and then I believe it's either Marshall or Wyoming in the second round of that event.
Yeah, and it's a chance for them to really make up some ground. So,
but if they can go 3-0 in these over the next week, then NCAA, you better start paying some damn attention to us.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, well, you might say, well, what do you mean make up some ground? They're not eligible for the NCAA tournament, but they will be. They will be because we will force the NCAA to give them a waiver.
Now, in terms of their toughest competition in the WAC, David, I'm still looking at this UMKC team. Did pick up a win over Mississippi State, although this Mississippi State team is kind of falling apart with some injuries at this point. But it's still a win over an SEC team this past week.
Yeah, I'm not as impressed. I mean, I watched them play against South Dakota, and if they win at Louisville, then I'll start paying attention.
At Louisville, they got tripped. I don't think they win that one. They got tripped to Oklahoma State, though. Keep an eye on that game.
Yeah,
and keep an eye on Martez Harrison. I mentioned him previously. I think he's a really good player there for the Kangaroos. Well, on that note, what we wanted to do next, I guess, is take a quick preview of some of the upcoming games and then run through our top 10 lists. We've mentioned a few of the upcoming games, but coming up starting Friday night, keeping a bit of an eye on this game here. Southern is at Louisiana Tech.
And this is a good game. Southern a lot better than what they have been in the past, what most SWAC has been. And again, a little in-state matchup. There's a little bit of heat, albeit not a lot, between these two. So yeah, this is an interesting one.
That's an interesting one. One that we thought heading into the season would be really interesting, which I don't think is almost meaningless at this point, is the Central Michigan at BYU game as well. Two teams that have been pretty disappointing so far.
Yeah, very much.
We've of course mentioned the Grand Canyon San Diego State game. Coming up Saturday, an in-state rivalry game. We always love these. Dartmouth and New Hampshire coming up Saturday.
Oh, huge game. The state of New Hampshire is on lockdown. Keggy the Keg will be there. It's going to be awesome.
Also on Saturday, South Dakota State's at Florida Gulf Coast, two teams that we did mention earlier tonight. We mentioned the Northern Iowa State game. Keeping a look at this Iona at Rhode Island game. It's a Rhode Island team that is obviously down this year because of E.C. Matthews being out. Iona, the other team in the Metro Atlantic, that's we've kind of almost been ignoring because of all the potential we've been paying to Monmouth.
Yeah, something like, let me see here. There he is. There he is, Chad. Keggy the Keg.
Oh, there he is.
There's right. Keggy the Keg. He's going to be there for the. I mean, he's all decked up for the Dartmouth New Hampshire. Okay.
That's one of the great mascots of all time.
Of all time, yes. Okay, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
We had mentioned Iona at Rhode Island. We're also going to mention New Mexico State at UTEP. That's another big rivalry. Actually.
Yeah, it's one of those, and these are extremely rare. New Mexico State, in New Mexico being the other one. These two play out of conference home and homes every year. So this is the second leg of that. I believe New Mexico State won the first one.
I believe they did as well. We can double check on that real quick, possibly here. Yeah. Yes, we can. And New Mexico State did win 73-59 at home earlier. Yeah. The continuing on with some games coming up on Sunday, we mentioned that Monmouth is at Rutgers. Another game I'm kind of looking at here, one of the Colonial teams we discussed, Hofstra is at Stony Brook. I think that'll be an interesting litmus test for both teams.
Yeah, it is. Hofstra has the big win over Florida State, doesn't have much other than that. And again, to see them go up against what should be an America East frontrunner should be fun.
And another game that I kind of look forward to on Monday involving another Colonial team, High Point is at William and Mary.
Yeah. And again, William and Mary, we talked about them earlier, been somewhat disappointing.
Heading into Tuesday of next week, Arkansas Little Rock has that game at Texas Tech. We mentioned that game.
That's a big one. That's a big one for both teams. I don't think Texas Tech is going to hang on once they get in the Big 12 play. But if Little Rock goes there and wins, I mean, don't you have to start thinking of them as – at what point do you start thinking it might be time to start ranking them?
Well, they're getting some votes already. And if they I don't think they're going to make the top 25 this week. But if they go and get that win next week, they may get some – they may be sneaking in there at number 25 by the time we get to the start of the new year.
Yeah.
Also coming up Tuesday night, South Dakota State, another road test at Weber State, one of the better teams in the Big Sky potentially.
Yeah.
And the Diamond Head Classic also starts on Tuesday night. Just want to highlight one of the quarterfinal games. The late game is two of our under-the-radar teams we've been discussing, Northern Iowa and Hawaii.
Yeah, and that's a big litmus test for them as well. And in this tournament, it's a chance for them to play and beat some quality competition. And Hawaii I think Hawaii needs it a little more.
Yeah.
Northern Iowa, but they both really need it.
One other game, David, I just wanted to get your thoughts on before we move on to our top 10. That's coming up next Wednesday. The Yukon Huskies will be hosting their in-state rivals from Central Connecticut State.
I like Yukon in that game.
Really?
Yeah. The Centenary Award.
How many points?
Somewhere around a lot. Now, we're talking Centenary Award, and you're allowed to schedule. I mean, again, everybody's going to schedule one or two power teams, but these are not the kinds of games that help you win the Centenary Award if you're Central Connecticut State.
Yeah, no, it doesn't help you win the Centenary Award. However, if a unbelievable miracle happens in this game, you've just completely lost any shot at winning it.
Right, and if that happens, I might not stop laughing for a month.
So this is kind of like when a power conference team schedules a non-D1 team. It does nothing to help you at all. Central Connecticut, this does nothing to help you at all. It can only hurt you.
Exactly.
Let's move on to our top 10, though. David, I'll run through my first three. I think we have very similar lists, at least at the top this week.
We do. And before we get started, I think we have the same top five, actually, and I think all five of them are inside the bubble.
Okay, well, let's run through the top. My top five in order are Wichita State, Valpo, Monmouth, Chattanooga, and Little Rock.
Okay, same five, slightly different. I have Wichita number one. I have Monmouth number two. Valpo, who I really, really like, but they just don't have the meat on their profile and aren't going to get it. I got them at number three. Unbeaten Little Rock, number four. Still really like them. In Chattanooga, they do have the one loss. I want to say it's the Louisiana Lafayette, but at number five, all five of these teams have very good profiles. They've really gotten some big wins. like again, I one of my pet peeves, you mentioned one of yours earlier, is when I hear someone say, well, they play in a one big conference, they need to win the conference tournament. No, you don't. When you get out there and schedule the way these teams have, and you get out there and play and win the way these teams have, you don't have to win the conference tournament. These teams have gone out and done what they need to do. I think they're inside the bubble. I think they will be inside the bubble if they run through their conferences, and all 5 of them are good enough to do that.
I think there's 2 other teams that are in my top 10 that have a shot to be inside the bubble. Little more difficult here. These are kind of the other 2. These are my 6 and 7. That's Arlington and Evansville.
Yeah, Arlington definitely has some. They both could. It would be more difficult. Arlington has some brand name wins on their profile. Ohio State, Memphis. I don't know if those are as quality as what Monmouth's done, what Wichita has done, what Little Rock's done. But yeah, Arlington is good. They're surprisingly and inexplicably good, really.
Well, and were they your 6 and 7 as well?
They were. No,
Okay.
I actually had South Dakota State at 6, but I would rethink that after. I would move. Those would be 6 and 7 on.
Okay. Yeah, at 8 I had South Dakota State. David, I made a little bit of change after the win tonight. My new number 9 team, which is not on my list I gave you before we went on the air, is this Middle Tennessee State team now.
And that's fair. They've definitely earned it. They've definitely looked it. I agree with that.
Okay. And at number 10, I have the Black Knights of Army.
I'm not there with you yet. I like Milwaukee and the team of the people and St. Mary's more than I like them.
I did give honorable mentions to Grand Canyon and St. Mary's. I did not give anything to Milwaukee. In fact, did we get a final score? If we get a final score, and then we can find out if we need to edit that.
Right.
Edit it out. But and they're currently in overtime with South Dakota. So on that note, though, David, any final thoughts as we head towards the holidays here?
Well, it is the holidays, and that apparently means it's the time of year where no one goes to basketball games. If you've been watching the attendance around the country this week, I think maybe we need more tournaments like the Diamond Head. Maybe we should play more exempt tournaments over the Christmas holidays as opposed to the Thanksgiving holidays. But anyway, we're also another piece of that is that there just aren't that many interesting games. A lot of people go to the bakery. I guess it's Christmas, so eat up on your cupcakes. But we're kind of in the home stretch here for Under the Radar. I am just amazed, and I know that we still have another 2 weeks to go before we start getting into the MEDA conference play, and how many teams have stepped up and gone out and won. And I wasn't expecting that this year. I was actually remember looking at the schedules and the teams the first couple of weeks and didn't think many of them were giving themselves a chance. But Chattanooga, Valpo, Monmouth, who was not one of the teams I was expecting to be in this situation, but there they are. All the credit in the world to those 5 programs for doing what they did. They went out there, they scheduled, and they won.
And I've got to echo that. I mean, we are here. We are in a slow part, as you said. But I'm looking here at my top 10 list from this week, and I have 6 teams on this top 10 list that I don't think, if you'd asked me at the start of the season if they would ever even be on my list, I would have agreed that they would. And 3 of them are, Monmouth, Little Rock, Arlington, teams that we're talking about as at-large bid caliber teams from what they've done so far. The other 2, Middle Tennessee and Army, they're probably not at-large bid caliber teams, but 2 other teams have really stepped up so far. It's going to be really interesting because I don't think this year we were talking about 5 under the radar teams as being serious at-large bid contenders.
No, we weren't. I mean, we would mention teams and we would talk about how we thought they had a chance. It's just like the preseason top 25. Yeah, they could get to the Final Four. Yeah, they could get – but there's really only 3 or 4 teams that are going to do it. This is just – now, Wichita was kind of a given. I think they're not going to be under the radar.
Yeah, we didn't expect Wichita to be on this list at all this year.
Yeah, but Monmouth, Valpo, we were kind of expecting. Little Rock, we weren't. Chattanooga, we liked, but we didn't think they'd be this good. Arlington was just a complete surprise. You were big on Evansville. I wasn't, but we're going to see 4 or 5 under the radar teams inside the bubble, I think.
I think we are. It's going to be really interesting when we get down to conference tournaments to see how many of them actually end up I know the phrase is stealing bids, but how many of them end up getting at-large bids because something crazy happens in the conference
Right.
tournament? And especially given that we're looking at two Sun Belt teams here,
Right.
only one of them can get the automatic bid.
Right. Yeah. And the way the Sun Belt works, neither of them probably will.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that heading into the season, it was Louisiana Lafayette and Louisiana Monroe that were my top two picks in that
Yeah.
league. So who knows? Uh, but on that note, we want to, I guess, wish everybody a happy shopping season. You know where to
Yeah.
go if you need some last minute shopping.
Right.
We'll be back before the holidays, before Christmas again with our Hoops HD report, and I guess with an under radar again middle of next week as well.
Yeah.
But on that note, have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you real soon.